Okay, thank you. Thanks for inviting us to your conference today. We really appreciate it. Yeah, it's great to get a slot here and meet you and talk to you all. So today we're going to give you a bit of background on diversity inclusion. Not going to teach you to suck egg, because I know a lot of you know some stuff about this subject. But more we want to focus on the inclusion element and how we can improve in this area. Then I'll hand over to Paula, who will talk very much better than me, who will talk to you about how you can get more involved, find out more, etc. So what is this? So what is diversity inclusion? So diversity is basically who we are, who makes up our organisation and society, that's made up of lots of different people from varied backgrounds. We have a variety of genders, ethnicity, sexual orientations, religions represented in Network Rail. And diversity can change based on who's leaving and who's joining the organisation. Kind of fun fact, out of our 42,500 people, we are represented by 108 different nationalities, which it shows you the breadth of people we have here. Inclusion is basically how we give a voice to the people who are different. Do we accept them, or are we unwelcoming to them and different ways of doing things and thinking? So this is all underpinned by the Equality Act and protected characteristics. Anyone know how many protected characteristics there are in the law? 12, not quite. Anyone else? Might be a while since some of you have done your mandatory diversity inclusion training. So the answer is 9. There you go. And there they are. So these are the protected characteristics as defined by the law. We all have multiple protected characteristics. Sometimes for some of us, we're in a majority group, sometimes in a minority group, but we're protected regardless. I happen to be in the majority group for most in this organisation as a white male without a disability currently, but I'm protected in the same way as if I was in multiple minority groups. These can change as we go through our careers. For instance, we might acquire a disability. Our marital status, for good or bad reasons, might change, as may our religion and beliefs, etc. So they can be fluid, but they are the characteristics protected by law. It doesn't mean that anything on that list is a fair game. Certainly not. We have bullying, harassment policies, etc. So it's not a case of, well, if it's not on that list, I'm all right. Well, not necessarily. But that's diversity inclusion. Okay. So next thing is why do we do it? It makes good business sense. Numerous studies have shown diverse and inclusive organisations and teams are higher performing, safer, and where appropriate or where applicable, more profitable, but only if they're inclusive. So it's not just about the diversity. And it's also to better serve our customers and passengers. We need to or ought to be more representative of those people. Oh, it's come up. So I've mentioned safety. On the legal side, obviously I mentioned it's the law. Treating people, colleagues, customers, potential employees differently based on their protected characteristics. If we do that, we're breaking the law, which can lead to penalties, lost tribunals and reputational damage. In the first 2 years of CP6, over half Network Rail's grievances in tribunals were related to discrimination. And these cost us in legal fees alone over £2 million, not to mention all the costs for the payouts, the times of people investigating, witness statements, work disruption, etc. And finally, moral, or it's just the right thing to do. We want to be treated fairly and with respect. We'd want our families in their places of education and work to be treated fairly and respectfully. So that's why we should be doing the same to our colleagues, whoever they are. So we have a diversity inclusion strategy, Everyone Matters. Google it or go on the hub site or connect and find it. It covers these areas and more with our plans and our targets, and Paul will talk to you more about that in a minute and how you can find out more on that. So yeah, what I said I wanted to talk about more was everyday inclusion. So how can we be better, influence others with inclusive leadership, encourage others to be better, and become a more inclusive organisation? So I'll get this right by the end, just before I finish, I'll realise how to work this. So managing our biases. Guess what? We all have biases. Whether we think we do or whether we think we don't, we do. We have to manage them and ensure we manage, support and recruit in a fair and transparent way. Our biases can be informed by experience, by everything we take in our environment, growing up, news, media, films, reading, etc. Yeah, I'll show a story. Is there anyone called Martin here? Any Martins in the room? That's probably a relief. So before I worked for Network Rail 20 years ago in a previous organisation, I had a boss called Martin, and he was awful. He was rude, controlling, lazy. He took credit for everything that was good, or the team or I did that was good, and blamed us all for anything that didn't go well. I'm sure you've all had a Martin in your careers, or if you haven't, well done. It wasn't great, but I shouldn't consider everyone called Martin the same way as that Martin. So if I was interviewing someone called Martin now, I should leave that in the past and think, actually, this is a new person, a different person. Why would I make that connection? But people do in other ways. So you may have had a bad experience with a colleague from a certain gender, ethnicity, nationality, or something, but that should be left with that person. You shouldn't think, oh well, I employed someone from that nationality a few years ago and it really didn't work out with a bad experience. That's not relevant, but people do carry that baggage, so we've got to try and find a way to actually leave that and forget those experiences and move on. Okay. Next area. Inclusive language. Language matters. Inclusive language matters. This isn't PC gone mad. It's about being respectful in how we talk and how we engage with people. The language we use on race, on sexual orientation, language on disability, for example, we wouldn't say wheelchair bound anymore like we might have used to say. We'd now say wheelchair user. So it's learning to be more inclusive in our language. On gender, it's really important. We want to move away from saying things like man hours, manning the signal box, to staff hours and staffing the signal box or resourcing the signal box. Small changes. People rather than brothers if you're talking to a group of mainly men or in whatever circumstance. So just think about those small changes you can make. We do get things wrong, and we need to learn. And if there's an opportunity to do it, have a conversation respectfully, talk to someone and say, do you think you might have said that better or a bit differently? I do know Network Rail are bringing out a new Speak Passenger Guide soon, in the next couple of months, and there's a section on inclusive language on there for all different protected characteristics. Instead of using this, you may consider using this word or phrase instead. So have a look at that and consider that, and encourage your colleagues to do the same. And like I say, we do get things wrong, all of us, and I do. I've got a bit of a story here. So my youngest daughter, is 13 now, so she went to Brownies, she used to go to Brownies, and about 4 years ago she came back and says, I said, what do you do today? She says, we had a talk from a police officer about online security and stuff. So you're a bit young for that, you're not getting a phone yet. Anyway, they had a talk about safety and what to do and what not to do, so it's really good, talking to her, it's really interesting. Anyway, we live in a small village and small communities and stuff, and I know a few of the police officers, so I said, this policeman that came to talk to you, what was he called? And she says, Dad, it was a lady police officer. And straight away I was thinking, I just made that assumption in my mind, that's my kind of biases. I assume policeman, police officer, straight away I'm thinking, this is what a police officer looks like. In the same way some of you might have encountered, this is what an engineer looks like. This is what a fire officer or firefighter looks like. So I think it's trying to be better. And like I say, I cringe when I think about that because I think I work in this area and I just fell into that trap. But she chastised me and corrected me and she does remember it, sadly. Okay, avoiding assumptions. So it's sometimes like I say, linked to what I've just said, we make assumptions. Things like a colleague's married, a new colleague perhaps. I'm married. I've been married 8 years. Okay. Oh, what's your wife's name? Might not be a wife. It might be a husband. So it's just actually having that conversation differently. Oh, you're married, are you? What's your husband or wife called? And actually, that person, if it could straight away, that makes it really inclusive for that person thinking, wow, no one's kind of asked me that in that way before. So just have a think about that. Things like someone from a different ethnicity, you might say, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Leeds. Yeah, but where are you really from? Just think of the implication of saying that to someone, actually, them, the grandparents may have been born in this country, and, the implication of how you ask things like that, or how your colleagues ask things like that. Assumptions about people's religion. Assuming people don't drink because they follow a certain faith, just ask. Don't assume that what you think you know about something may be the case. Just ask that person. Assumptions we make about disabled colleagues or disabled people. They'll be lazy. They'll easily become fatigued. They'll probably need to take loads of time off and loads of appointments. There's no evidence that is the case at all. So try and think about that. Those type of assumptions. And also, it's worth mentioning that it's law. We're legally obliged to make reasonable adjustments. to support disabled colleagues and passengers, and rightly so. So, yeah, don't let those assumptions cloud things. And, you know, again, we're all guilty of this. I've got a friend who's an engineer for Network Rail, different school, different area to us, but she went into a school, parents' evening at primary school, and a young female teacher said, oh, what do you do? She says, oh, I'm an engineer in the railway. She said, well, you don't look like an engineer. You know, and that's, you know, that's, you know, we said about how we're conditioned. You know, that's what our kids are getting at school from teachers, from parents, from the environment, from society, from television. So those little things that do make a difference. Yeah, respectful conversations. So, you know, trying to avoid asking people intrusive questions about their relationships, new starters. You know, it's not the sort of thing to open with on the first few hours. You know, have you got a boyfriend? Have you got a girlfriend? Or whatever. Perhaps it's you know, try and make how that makes someone feel. Don't ask certain groups questions about topics in the news. And what I mean by this is, for example, you know, I wouldn't suggest you should ask a Muslim colleague their views on 9/11 or a terrorist attack, or trans colleagues about trans people in sports and the stuff that's been on the news and in the media, social media recently. I don't think that, you know, why should they have an opinion on that any more than, you know, I wouldn't expect someone demanding an opinion for me on the crimes of Jimmy Savile or the Yorkshire Ripper because I can come from Yorkshire. I mean, it's as ridiculous as that. So, you know, think about that, you know, what you're asking people, or, you know, thinking, oh, well, I'd be interested to see what you think because you share that background or that protected characteristic. Well, it's probably not the right thing to do. Names are important. So part of being respectful is getting people's names right. Our names are personal to us, and it is really important we get them right. And, you know, and some names are harder for us to learn and get than others. You know, try and get it correct. Don't guess. Learn. Practice somebody's names if it's difficult. Take your time to get it right. This is everyday inclusion. Our names are important to us. Well, unless you're called Martin, that doesn't matter then. But apart from that, sorry, there's a fly buzzing around me. I keep thinking that it's my hair, but it's not. Is that a bad sign? I don't know. Don't leave me alone. Yeah, so names are important. Also, don't assign people. This is a new aftershave, I think. I don't know. It's attracting flies anyway. So yeah, don't give people nicknames because it's easier. You know, people have nicknames and that's fine if they're willing participant, etc. You know, I won't tell you what mine were growing up. But, you know, it is important that, I don't know if any of you follow cricket, mentioned before, I like my cricket. Well, Yorkshire, my team, have been hauled over the coals for a lot of racism. It's been horrendous, the stuff that's gone on there. Well, they had a new player a few years ago, a Sri Lankan player, a really difficult name to pronounce and spell. They are long, complicated names, Sri Lankan names, and I play cricket with a couple of Sri Lankans. But they decided, oh, we can't say your name, we'll call you Steve. And everyone just called him Steve from then on. And that was one of the many things, allegations, and many of them have been upheld against Yorkshire Cricket Club. So yeah, don't do that, or don't let people do that. So be aware of banter. So we don't want sterile environments. You know, we spend a lot of time at work, and we want to have a laugh. You know, it is important to have a good time. But you need to, and I can't tell you where the line is in your different places of business and work. But if you're having to look around before you make a comment or a joke and see who's around, then it really isn't something we should be saying. Banter around the 9 protected characteristics are unlawful. But even if they're not into that area, like I said before, it could well be an bullying harassment policy if you sort of going too far on some of the on other areas. Constant relentless teasing about anything can have an effect on someone, so be mindful of that, and you know, be brave enough to stand up and rein others in, and support colleagues where you do see it. And you know, if you get any new starters in your area, when you're out on site or whatever in different teams, pull them aside, ask them how they're settling in, ask them if they've been made to feel welcome. This is inclusion, and it's inclusive leadership. Yeah, and it's not say we can't have jokes and banter or whatever, you know, but just think, you know, what is the effect on that person? You know, Lorraine, my boss, who left recently, and for now, hopefully not long, I'm covering her role. I used to love coming on a Monday morning when Arsenal lost at weekend. She's an Arsenal season ticket holder, so that was great. I couldn't wait to tease and mock her about that, but just knowing what's appropriate. I think so. Thinking about people's needs. We have social events, so try different activities, different venues which offer something for everyone. Now, I'm not saying we can't have drinking socials as teams that end in bad dancing and a kebab at 1 in the morning. That's fine, but don't let that be the only thing your team ever does. You know, some people don't drink for religious, health, pregnancy, or whatever reasons. Beware of that. On welfare and PPE, does your DE or depot have facilities that everyone can change and shower in? If not, what can you do to influence that change? Whether through property, your RMD or whatever, say actually we need to be better here. So look out for that, whether you're personally affected or not. On PPE, might be aware we have many new items on the catalogue, different shapes for females, pregnancy, paternity PPE, facilities on site. And what about people on the menstrual cycle? We have menstrual cups in the catalogue. And let's be honest, it's not an easy conversation for many of us to have. I've found out with my teenage daughters in the last couple of years. But let your new starters know these things exist, and because you can probably guarantee it's been something they've been worried about. And that's kind of inclusion in that area. And then finally, celebrating differences. So, we've all got different things that are important to us in life. So, for instance, religious festivals. If you know someone follows a different religion in your team, find out what terms to use to wish someone well at Hanukkah, Eid, Diwali, etc. Google is your friend. You can find out the right phrase to use. And that sort of thing makes a big difference, and that's inclusion. Ask a colleague who you know may be fasting or planning to, what you can do to help and support and to find out more. If you've got an LGBTQ colleague, who's attending Pride, ask them if you can come along. Irrespective of your sexual orientation, I'm sure that would be appreciated, and that's inclusion. Challenge each other in a respectful way to be more inclusive, calling people out in a dignified way, maybe in a one-to-one, to try and be better. And then some of you will be thinking, as a close, some of you will be thinking, this is a waste of time, this isn't necessary maybe, we're here to run a railway, etc., etc. Why do we do this? Why is it important? And I'll kind of share, I thought the same. So I've been Network Rail 20 years, and 10 years ago, I was in internal audit. And for anyone who doesn't know internal audit, they're the people who don't know how to do your job, that ask you about 3 questions, then write a report recommending how to improve what you're doing. So I'm not there anymore. But so I was in there. We're planning an audit on ageing workforce after the mandatory retirement age got scrapped, and the risks around that, of people staying on later in life and opportunities dwindling for the younger people, etc. So a colleague in my team, audit team, sent me an article. We've got a new Director of Diversity and Inclusion Network Rail, Ray Martins. Come on, Connect. So I'm reading this. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Director of Diversity and Inclusion, I bet they're paying this, why do we need that? And I just didn't get it. Anyway, went to meet her, I was dragged along, went to meet her for an hour, ended up staying 3 hours, we was interviewing her, chatting and finding out about what this programme was, why we're doing this and some of the evidence, and I'm very much, I need to see evidence to believe stuff. People telling me isn't enough. So, yeah, anyway, a few weeks later in finance, where I work in internal audit, there's an opportunity to lead the diversity inclusion work on top of the day job. So I took the opportunity and ended up seconded to the diversity inclusion team a couple of years later, and ended up in the team and somehow leading the work, hopefully not for long, in Network Rail. So I think it is important work, and I think allowing everyone to do a good job, an inclusive environment, a fair environment, and just go home safe and happy is kind of what we all want. So I think anything you can do to influence that and support your people will be great. So that's it from me. I'll hand over to Paula, who can tell you how to get involved and do more, and we'll look forward to speaking to you all outside, and just form a queue and we'll make time for you. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, John. I know we're running a little bit short of time. Got 10 minutes. Excellent. Okay. Yeah, so John's gone through with you what the strategy is, how that relates to Network Rail, a little bit about how that translates to you and your role. So we just wanted to share some things with you now, some tools that are available that you might not have heard of before. So firstly, we have our Everyone Matters guides. So as you can see, there's loads of topics available for you. They're a really, really good source of information, particularly if you're a line manager. So there's sections in there about how to have difficult conversations about some of these topics. We're updating them all the time. If you've got any ideas for new topics that you want to see, just let us know, email us. We've got 2 new guides that have come out recently. So the first one is supporting deaf of hard of hearing colleagues, and also addressing and reporting sexual harassment. So really interesting topics. So I definitely recommend having a look at those. They're all on our SharePoint page. Or if you want to come over to our stand, as John said, in the break, we'll love to talk to you about all of these. Another thing that you can do is share your diversity data with us. So you might be wondering, why on earth would I want to share my information with you? But actually, data underpins all of the work that we do in the D&I team. It's really, really important that we have good quality data. So you can update your data on Oracle. If you don't have access to Oracle, you can also fill in an online form. But really, it's just so we can understand the people that work for us, and we can identify areas of underrepresentation. It's not just all, as John said, it's not all about, you know, ethnicity, gender, things like that. Even if you just update whether you're a carer or not, really does help us. So if we know the amount of carers that are in the business, we can then tailor our projects to that. We can get more support for you. So if you do one thing, please do update your details on Oracle. That would be fantastic. So a quick one, we've got 7 employee networks, but for those in the room, can you raise your hand if you've heard of the employee networks before, even if just one network? Okay, that's quite a few, that's great. So if you're not already a member, please do sign up. They're really, really helpful in reflecting and understanding all the different communities that we serve and that work for us within Network Rail. Each of the employee networks has an exec team member as their sponsor, so they have that backing and support behind them. There's a couple of things that they're really useful for. So they feedback on the effectiveness of our projects, so we know whether we're doing a good job. They raise awareness about specific diversity and inclusion issues. We use them to consult on any proposed changes to policies or procedures, so we know if they're right for specific people. And then they support their membership by kind of raising voices and letting us know about any concerns or views that come up. As I say, please do sign up. We've had a couple of questions today. As a bare minimum, as an employee network member, is you just receive the newsletter. You don't have to do anything, just have a look at the newsletter, share it with your team. If you want to go a level above that, you can go to the events and get involved in organising events as well. But even if you just receive the newsletter, that is fantastic. So we also have our D&I champions. I hope we've got some D&I champions in the room. Basically, they are just volunteers across the business who typically have an interest in promoting diversity and inclusion. And that's either in their local teams, if it's just a really small team that you talk to about D&I, or whether it's their local functional region. So, you know, it's up to you how big you want to go with things. So there's 3 core elements to being a D&I champion. So that's role modelling inclusive behaviours, challenging non-inclusive behaviours, and also signposting colleagues to support. So for example, those guides on our SharePoint page. If you do become a champion, you can either get a really lovely rainbow lanyard, like I'm wearing now, or if you do wear PPE, we do have these armbands that you can get. So if you sign up today, we've got some for you today, which you can take away with you. Or if not, if you sign up at a later date or online, we'll send these out to you out in the post. They'll even go to your home address if needed. Okay. And don't worry, you don't just get thrown into it, you do get some support as a D&I champion. So as a first starter, you get an induction, you get access to all the resources, all the things that I've talked about. Something else that you do get is opportunities so to upskill, so you get invites to our D&I lunch and learns on specific topics. Any other kind of D&I projects or initiatives that we're running. So recently we had our reciprocal mentoring programme, and that was so D&I champions were encouraged to apply, and that would be to mentor a member of the exec and the exec to mentor you back. So it's these kind of things that you'll get communications about and you'll be able to get involved in. And it says there, community of champions, so you'll get people around you. If you ever need support, anyone to turn to, they're all there. They're a really lovely, friendly bunch. You can again visit our SharePoint page or, as I said, visit our stand later. Because I've talked about our SharePoint page so much, here's what it looks like. It's a really simple page. Down the left-hand side, you've got all the things I've talked about, our projects, our networks and guides, and there's events on there as well, which you can sign up to. They're all recorded, so you can watch them at a later date. And then something that actually we'd really love your input on. So it's to do with PPE. So we're going to be sending out a survey. I was hoping it would be ready for today, but with everything that's going on, it's just been postponed. But do keep your eyes peeled for this. So we're looking to make some changes to the clothing that we offer within our PPE catalogue. So as John said, we've already got some tailored PPE clothing for, say, pregnant people. However, some other of our colleagues have fed back that there are other requirements that are needed. So it might be around faith, disability, age, and other gender issues. And again, whilst it says there, the primary purpose of PPE is for health and safety, it's really, really important that it is comfortable, that it works for us as individuals, and it's not just blanket clothing. So what we'll do, we'll try and get some comms out to you with the survey on, but please do keep your eyes peeled. The survey is completely anonymous, so we want you to be as open and honest as possible. We want your real feedback on this, and so we can make some proper changes. And then just a really quick recap. So what can you do? We'd love, share your data with us. Again, anonymous, but it helps so much in driving the change that's needed in the organisation. Become a D&I champion or join our employee networks. Come and see us at our stand, or those watching online, please do either email us at diversityandinclusion@networkrail.co.uk for more information, or go on our SharePoint page and then fill in our PPE survey when it comes out. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for having us today. It's really good to have the opportunity to speak to you all. So thank you.